if a child is closer to just birth, you are more like a parent. Mm-hmm. If the kid is more older, then you're more like a friend. So you can never be a friend, you can never be a parent, and the age of the onset of the child determines more typically what you kind of are. Think about it. Hi there, my name is Chris Gazdick with Through a Therapist's Eyes. We are talking about a relationship today that is dynamic. The co-parenting relationship. You know them, you love them, we all know they're stressful, but they can actually be really advantageous. So we're going to be diving into, what did we do the title? All about co-parenting. So hang on, man, because we're going to go for a ride because there's a lot of factors and things to really get into and discuss. But we have sickness going through the crew here this week, as is everywhere, it seems like. So we got the man behind the curtain, Mr. Neil Robinson, hanging out with us over there. How are you, sir?
I am doing good. Better than my cough suggests, but yeah, I'm actually doing good.
Well, that was before we turned the mic on.
Yeah, I know, but I'm sure you'll hear coughs later, so...
You still have a tickle?
Just warn everybody.
I'll have it for a couple more days.
Oh, wow.
That's how I heal.
Well, you've been healed for like a week and a half.
I know, but I get a cough for like 2 weeks after, like when I get really sick.
Oh, jeez.
So.
And we got Miss Victoria Pendergrass hanging with us again. How are you, ma'am?
I'm good.
Yeah, do you have?
I'm kicking. Yeah, everybody showed up for me today.
You had a busy day,
it's
right?
It's a good day when everybody shows up.
I can relate. I can relate to that very well. So, this is Through a Therapist's Eyes, where you get insights from therapists directly in your home or personal time in your car. We have, let me see, the book's still out, Re-Understanding Emotions and Becoming Your Best Self. I read an article recently that authors don't do this, and I'm about to do it. They'll say how cool your book is, and authors will describe the neatness of your book, and they will do everything but what I'm about to do. So, listening audience around the world, it is called Through a Therapist's Eyes, Re-Understanding Emotions and Becoming Your Best Self, and I'm asking you to buy it. Thought it was a cool article. Authors never do that.
Oh, ask people to buy their books.
Do you want to buy it? I thought, that is so simple, and it was my publisher that put this article out there, and I'm like, it's so true. Like, I don't know if I've hardly ever asked anybody, hey, do you want to buy this book, Neil?
Well, I already have my own copy.
You do.
It's signed. I have a signed copy.
You have a signed copy, indeed. So I'm asking everybody around the world there to check it out and buy it. I think it's really something that will be helpful. We are switching to YouTube Live soon, and that is the Through a Therapist's Eyes channel. So you just type it in the search bar, find us, and then when you get onto that, you'll click the subscribe button, and then you'll click the little blue bell, and that will tell you when we come up on live, and it'll give you the notification. We also, how did I do, Neil? I like to check out with you, man.
That was good. It's getting smoother, I'll tell you that.
That was above average? I'm above average now?
Yep.
Sweet. Just need that affirmation.
You've gone past mediocre. Good job, Chris.
We're making progress.
Fantastic. Apple iTunes lets you give some reviews and 5 stars, and understand our business being an author and podcasters. These reviews are a big deal. I'm also asking you to check out, if you've bought the book, we're working with somebody on our marketing stuff, and she tells me I need more reviews. So please help out. If you like the show, help us out. That really makes a big difference.
And with your second book coming out, get those Amazon reviews in there.
Yeah, so it is becoming more important this year.
Yep.
As we move towards that. So this is the human emotional experience, which we endeavor to figure out together. So I didn't prepare anything.
Again, we do not provide any.
Why am I doing that?
This is like the 4th week in a row.
It's YouTube throwing him off. He has 5 things he can say at the intro, and the medical one's just getting shoved off to the side.
That has never been a thing for me.
I'm sorry. It might be me, but...
No,
yeah,
it needs
for the
to be
last...
said that we do not deliver therapy services here of any kind in this podcast. It's
I'm sorry.
It's a cover thing.
I mean, if you want me to, I could take that from
you know
now
what,
on.
maybe
I
you
just-
do. How about we just do that? We'll assign that to you in the intro. That's hysterical. Seriously, 3-4 years.
I keep waiting for you to be like, okay, is he gonna say it? Is he gonna say it? And then
And the
you
way
don't say it. I'm like, oh wait.
And the way my brain works, once I get something locked in or locked out,
Mm-hmm.
so this is going to be an issue now for a little while until I get it locked back in my
Yeah.
brain. So I
Well.
don't know. Bear with me. All about step parenting. Really, I want you to think about these questions, right? Because there is so much that goes on in the way of parenting roles when you're dealing with after a divorce. And the step parenting role is a tricky, tricky role. Really, truly, indeed. What is a step parent's role is something that people really struggle with, particularly at the beginning of a new relationship and marriage. And then what life adjustments need to be made by the step parent and then also by the child, because these are major adjustments. They're not simple. They're major adjustments. For a child, you've got a brand new adult parent figure in your life. For a step parent, you've got a brand new child, all unique unto themselves now in your life. And it's a big and important role. And thirdly, how to accept a step parent being present by the divorced or the other custodial parent. So I want to take this in some directions a little bit today. Part of my goal, because we've talked about parenting, we've talked about blended families and divorce and such. But you see in those questions, part of my goal is looking a little bit more at like, what are the roles? What are the adjustments? How do we handle some of these facets of new relationship boundaries with your ex and with your new partner and with your new child? Like there's some things that angle that way that people don't really think about. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 So I want to angle us a little bit that way, but yeah. So what do y'all think? I mean, I've kind of set it up as this dynamic relationship, this tricky and confusing thing. I mean, you know, you deal with this a lot, Victoria. I'm sure with kids. This is
Oh yeah.
this is sort of in your wheelhouse, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. A daily basis of dealing with, all separate situations where, divorced parents and both of them remarried, divorced parents were only one remarried,
Yeah.
and then if you take two blended families, like if you get divorced and then you married someone who's also been divorced and has kids, then that adds a whole another aspect of it. Like,
It's funny. We I got you both aged on the Brady Bunch. That was primetime TV. Do you all ever seen the Brady Bunch?
Yeah.
Man,
yes.
we loved the Brady Bunch when I was a kid, man. That was like primetime TV. And it was interesting because that was a whole new cultural shift
Yeah.
that began to be like a thing, in around the 80s and even the 70s when that was all kind of, new and being experienced a whole lot more because the divorce rate went through the roof when the 60s and 70s kind of came on. And then it's kind of like, well, holy cow, how do you deal with these whole new blended family scenarios? And there are many of the different varieties as you were just, kind of mentioning. What are you thinking over there, Mr. Robinson?
I just want to know if they actually ever said what happened to the other spouses in the Brady Bunch. Like, where did, like, I never asked, like, I just thought, like, how did, because you think about those dynamics of the things where, like, the significant other dies in some horrible way or some, like, whatever.
Yeah,
So it's not so it's not so bad that the person gets remarried. It's not like did they ever say like what happened to the previous?
It's not quite what I was
spouses?
swinging over to you.
Sorry, you asked where my brain was. That's what I was thinking. Like, did they
and
ever
now
tell
you've
that?
got my brain there because you know what? Now I need to know like what happened to Greg's ex-wife or whatever, right? I mean,
Right,
what?
so if the audience, if you guys know, like let us know what happened to the Brady, but like the previous.
We need
spouses.
somebody on Facebook Live to Google us and then let us know on the comments there. That is gonna bug the crap out of me now.
Sorry.
Thanks. Now I did
Very
turn my-
valid question, though.
But no, I think the dynamics of the parents and when you add new caregivers and then like you said siblings, because I have a half brother and a stepsister,
Yeah.
So there's that with it too. And so
Yeah, you're
like,
adding like another layer to it.
yeah, well,
with
because
the-
my stepdad had a kid from a first marriage, going back
Yeah.
to and then my mom and stepdad had a kid, so like
Right.
it adds another dynamic. So
Yeah.
so yeah, that's definitely a crazy thing.
Then it also like if you're the same age as
The other kid,
as the other kid, and then it's almost like you're twins or because you're in the same grade if you're at the same school, but then now technically you're in the same family and you're the same age, and I mean I think there's a bunch of
There
different
really
aspects
are
to it.
so many layers that happen, and then it's always like, well, how do you handle this one? I never heard anybody talk about those. You're right, and I've done small town therapy for much of my career,
Right.
and it is a small town around here, and that happens.
Yeah, we do have small town mentality.
It's been. Well, I didn't say mentality.
Well, not mentality. Well, I guess not mentality, but
We'll have hate mail coming in, Victoria. But no, it's a thing where I've had teachers that start dating the parent, and different neighbors begin dating, and so you were my neighbor buddy, now you're my sibling. Like it's really a lot of adjustments, isn't it?
yeah, it
Right.
can be. Yeah, for sure.
So let's dial in a little bit here with like what really is the role, do you think, of a step parent? I think I just want to open it up broadly. What's the role? How does a step parent traverse this newness now?
I think caution, maybe.
Okay.
At least at the beginning, because I mean, at the beginning, you're trying to figure out like, how much do I discipline? Do I discipline at all? Do I, am I just a support person? You're trying to figure out the path of like what you're supposed to do. And I think a lot of that comes with communication with your new spouse and, also communication with the kids, depending how old they are.
So I hear you saying we're trying to develop the role.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
at least in the beginning, that's because, I mean, I think it's going to depend on the family. I mean, you might marry someone who doesn't want the step parent to have any involvement in discipline,
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, well, I'm the real parent or not the real parent,
But people say that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the
I'm the real parent.
I'm the
You're not the real
biological,
parent.
the biological parent. So it's between me and the other biological parent. And, and then
You don't get a vote.
right. Well, then you all might also have where if you are the step parent, you don't know. I mean, if the biological parent is not around and the child does something that needs to be disciplined or needs to have some type of reaction or response,
Yeah.
like, do I do it? Do I not do it? Like, what do I do?
What I hear you saying is there's just a lot of variance in
For
this.
sure.
There's a lot of variance and variations that you come across. Neil, from a non-clinical perspective, I guess I'm kind of curious open-endedly, like what your angle is or what you've experienced as what is the step parent's role?
it's to be a parent.
Ah.
A step parent's role is to be the parent.
Yeah.
So in my head, you're like, you have to figure all. I'm like, no. If you marry someone that has kids, your job is now part caretaker of that child, whether it's yours or not. Now, how you handle the situation between the other parent, your counterpart on the other side, or anything like that. But to me, if you're there for the kid with the kid's best interest at heart, the kid is going to see that. And while it might be rough at first, they will eventually get through that. But my job, like if I have my kids' friends over, my job is to make sure they're safe and responsible and things are getting done.
And that's a parent role.
And that's a parent role. So
even
as
though they're not technically your kids.
right, because that's what if they come over, that's what I signed up for. So with both my step parents, my stepmom, my stepdad, they took the role as my other parent when I was over at that relationship. Now the politics that went on between like when we would do something,
now
or
we
something,
get interesting.
like that's a whole nother conversation that as a younger person I wasn't involved in, but I was also raised to say that step parent is your parent and they treated me like their kid. And I think that's what to me, in my head, it's a no-brainer. That has to happen. Now, there's a lot of struggles, I think, with.
I was going to say, I have
age.
specific.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have a specific case of mine in mind where the step parent is extremely cautious and does not want to discipline and do roles of the parent
Yeah.
with the step kid. And so, I mean, I think the
therein lies
the goal is to get what Neil is saying.
Well,
the goal
therein
is
lies,
to
I just want to say, Victoria, therein lies what you experience in our therapy office.
right.
Neil's able to kind of, that's why I love
Yeah, you're able
your
to give an
component,
ideal
right?
situation.
It's just kind of clean cut, but it's really not. There's a lot of questions and doubts and fears and confusions that happen that we see in our therapy office where it isn't so clean cut. But I love both what you did with that because there is so much variance. I just agreed and saw that in our therapy office. But it also has the word parent in step parent, Neil, right? I want to divulge into a quick personal story to demonstrate like the adjustment that this is. So my parents got divorced when I was somewhere around 10, 12 years old or so. And after a while or whatever, my dad got remarried. And so, I don't know, I was like a teenager or whatever when this one poignant particular conversation occurred between my dad and I. And I hope I hope he's not upset that I would share this, but, it made me feel really, really stupid, but I was so glad that he said what he said to me. And he didn't say much. He had a way of just like, okay, because I didn't, it was Mother's Day or something. And I think it was Mother's Day. Maybe it was a birthday even. But it was this and that. I'm a teenager. I didn't buy cards. I didn't think of other people. I'm so egocentric, right? Like, I'm a teenager.
Right.
But he looked at me one day, and all he said was, Chris, in the store, they do have step-parent cards. And I was like, oh, they do. I guess they do. I didn't know that I literally did not think in the capacity at that point to honor my stepmom in that way. And I don't know if I ever said sorry about that, but I'm sorry about that in that I just didn't know. I didn't think about it. And he really helped me with these adjustments. Yeah. Over the years as a therapist, I have got what I think is a really simple to understand and important guidepost about this idea of what is the role. And we're going to get into a lot of complications on what are the drawbacks, what are the boundary adjustments, how does this work, and then we have a lot to get to. I even thought about making this a part 1 and part 2, honestly, because there's so many confusing things and difficult things that go into this. So bear with me. I may pull that as a choice. Neil, you let me know what you think at some point. If that makes sense to do or not, or you can veto me now. What do you think?
I'm fine. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you cover, and I feel like
there really is.
It kind of makes me wonder if go ahead and plan to do 2 parts just so we don't rush.
Right. Okay. That's what I was thinking.
I mean, I could think that would be very. There's so much in this.
There is a lot.
And the one thing I do want to point out that between you and just even you and me, I was like 6 when my parents got remarried. Let's see. No, maybe I was 8. I think I was 8. When you were an early teen, late tween, whatever,
right.
That 5-6 years makes a difference.
Huge.
When you add it. And then if you make it, I'm thinking about like my dad got remarried, like 10 years ago. And I'm like, I really like the lady, but I'm not going to call her my mom because it's weird.
Yeah.
So you have those weird aspects of like, depending when the age of the kid then dictates kind of the boundaries that are in place because there's a different stage in their life.
You have so stolen my thunder.
Yes.
The thundercloud has already clapped and I haven't spoken. No, you're right on point, Neil. You are so insightful and I value you in that way because it's a non-clinical perspective that you have, but your experience and it's on point. Here's my guidepost over the years in a therapy office is exactly to that huge differential. It's not a simple differential. It's a huge differential. So a step-parent role that I've really gone by and helped many, many people try to traverse the adjustments is that a step-parent is not ever a friend, right?
I would agree.
They're also not ever a full biological parent. They're not a parent, and they're not a friend. The younger a child is at onset of the relationship, exactly what you described, Neil, determines more of the typical, it's an important word, role that you play. If a child is closer to just birth, you are more like a parent. If the kid is more older, then you're more like a friend. So you can never be a friend, you can never be a parent, and the age of the onset of the child determines more typically what you kind of are. Think about it.
Yeah.
If you begin a step-parent relationship with this kid and the kid's 3 years old, I mean, you're wiping bottoms and cleaning stuff and taking baths and guiding this kid. I mean, you're really involved in their life like a parent would be, right? But if your kid is 15 years old and you introduce yourself, hey, I'm marrying your mom and I'm your stepdad. All right, buddy, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about what
Like,
you're
I
going to
don't
get
care.
from a 15-year-old.
Well, and I think to add to that, I also think it depends on the status of the other biological parent. So what I mean by that is, for example,
I think I disagree with you, but I'll push back.
okay. Well,
That's
what I think I mean is if the other parent dies, for example, okay, so like say you get divorced,
Yeah,
and
you're a widower. Or a
yeah,
widow.
and so but you're divorced already, and you remarry, but then your ex passes away. I think that because there is not a presence of that other parent, then especially if the kid is still younger, the kid might be more likely, maybe not to call them dad. I don't know about all that logistically, but you might play more of that parental role because there is the absence of. Am I making sense?
It becomes a need. There's
Yeah,
no
it
that
might be,
other
yeah.
parent's not there. Where the other's kind of like the luxury. Oh, now I got two dads, or I have
Right.
two moms now. Like, oh, okay, that's nice. But
Or
yeah,
if a
when-
parent is in jail, then obviously they're not that involved in the kid's life, and so then the step parent would. I just feel like I don't know. I feel like
think the
maybe
way
I'm talking in circles.
I think the way that I want to push back at that, Victoria, is yes, there's lots of circumstances. The
Right.
ex-spouse or I hate the term, but we all know the term, baby daddy or mommy daddy, or mommy, what is it? Baby daddy is
Baby
more-
mama.
Baby mama, thank you. God, they're horrible terms, but when you weren't married or when you were divorced or you might be a widower or the other person might have addiction issues or they might have been terminating parent rights. There are so many facets that do come into this.
Yeah.
I think that what I want to push back in and say is that the guidepost of you're never a friend, you're never a parent.
Still applies.
The younger that the kid is, the more parent like you are,
Right.
and the more friend like you are if the kid is older remains solid.
Okay. Yeah. I can get that.
Because when their parent is actively involved, that doesn't, let me say this, listen, when the other parent is actively involved, that does not diminish your role in this kid's life.
Very true. Very true.
It's still, you are still all you step parents out there, listen, you are still a super valuable resource for this kid's life. And that's part of what we're going to talk about
Right.
with the advantages and things to celebrate with this. Like, that's a fantastic piece. They get more bang for their buck. The kid gets more heads caring about them.
I got more birthdays, more report card money.
More
I was like
presents.
double Christmases,
Yeah.
double Thanksgivings. Like it was
Absolutely.
it was
Right?
jackpot.
And I think that's so important because a step parent can feel devalued.
Mm-hmm.
Or deep questions about, I don't have a place here. I'm unimportant. You're the biological parent and you take these kids. They don't care about me. Like, none of that is really valid or true. The ideal is like you're really an integral part. I mean, you're living with these people and you're a parent figure. So there's a lot of factors, Victoria, but I push back because,
Okay.
that still has great value in the adult's life, by the way. You know how much you learn about becoming a parent, about yourself, the step parent. They're
Right.
really involved there.
All right. No, yeah, I can get where you're coming from.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. No, it does. Yeah.
But I think, what we've touched on is the thought that I had in a big way of a lot of this does begin to get negotiated. Right? You said, Neil, maybe I'll kick it back to you in that I wasn't involved in all of those political things. I was the kid. You said you were young, right? About 6 or so?
Yeah, I think I was. I think when they finally got married, I think the last marriage, I think I was 8. Because I think it was 91. No, it was 90. So I would have been 7. So.
Yeah, so the fascination here is as through young eyes just experiencing this, now having the adult parental mind because you're a parent, like what can you imagine those political aspirations were of the different characters involved or the different points of negotiation because it can get nasty.
Yeah, there were a few times I know that, well, there were some custody battles at one point. There was some, being from Ohio and moving down here, there was a lot of stuff with that. And then at one point I moved in with my dad at the end. Like I'm sure that there was a lot of stuff that like I had no clue about, but I knew I would hear things of like, can't do this or do that, or trying to work together with child support and then getting other stuff does like,
yeah,
it's just like, I just don't, that's why Alicia and me are like, we really don't want to ever get divorced because we don't want to deal with that stuff.
You don't want to deal with the logistical nightmare of getting divorced.
So
it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot, and it's a lot of emotion that gets flowed around that we need to deal with because the parents do need to be political. And I don't mind that word. To me,
right.
I know we've pretty much damned that word in our culture. Like politics are bad. Well, to me, it's a group of people kind of figuring out together how we're going to operate. What are the operational norms? What are the operational standards? What are the operational, here's a very key word, right? Expectations that we have here with these different and very new and very important relationships. Like, this is my kid, says the divorced parent. And you're marrying who?
Right.
Oh, it can get...
Yeah.
It can
well,
get
and then
so...
you have to include like, you don't want to do it in front of the kids, and you don't, like you got to be cautious of,
conflict,
and then, what kind of impression you're leaving on your kids. And, if you're knockout, drag out, screaming, fighting like about custody
which
right in
happens
front
a
of your
lot.
kids, like what
Yeah.
kind of example is that setting for them?
It happens
And then,
a lot.
We had
You
one.
know?
I had one situation with my stepdad and my dad that got pretty heated at one
Ooh.
point. As we got older, it was kind of I don't know the
Boys
whole
clashed.
things. I just know it just got. Which is funny that it was as we were older. Like it wasn't
And
early
yeah,
on.
it wasn't
was,
early
on.
It was
Yeah, that
towards
is
the end. It was
kinda-
like
The
but
norms
yeah,
were all
I-
established and everything was in flow and life's going along, right?
Yep. And so that was kind of strange, but there were some, there was a conflict. So
And that's all we get today.
That's all the information.
it
you
didn't
get.
really involve me. I just know what was going on, and so it was
Right.
just one of those things. It's like,
Well, people develop a relationship with you as, little young Neil. I mean, I'm a step-parent and I care deeply about this kid. And and things begin to be discussed, hopefully, and whatnot. But yeah, so there's a lot of negotiation. And by the way, I've a little bit ago I made a definitive statement in my mind. I want to do a part 2 because we have way more to get to with this than we're going to get to today.
Right.
I mean, we're almost 30 minutes in already.
Right. I mean, and this
We've
is,
barely scratched the surface.
yeah, because these are things that people don't talk about.
I think it is sometimes a taboo kind of
Right,
topic of, what crosses a line, what's too much information to share.
And that's why I
could make
spent
so
it-
many TV references right now, but like,
Seriously. That's why I really like the guidepost there. I'll say it again. You're never a friend. You're never a parent. The
right.
age of onset of your parental relationship, the more young, the more a friend. The more old, the more a friend. The more young, the more a parent. That holds pretty true in all of my years of doing therapy. That's been pretty solid, and I've stood on that for a long time, and it really hasn't guided me wrong. But here's an interesting piece in this. What is this role? Remember I told you there's questions from the beginning, right? I want you to think about. I want to review them real quick. What is the step-parent's role? Well, we're covering that a lot. But in that discussion, what life adjustments need to be made by the step-parent and the child? But then also, here's one. how to accept a step-parent being presented by the divorced other custodial parent. So in this discussion of what is the step-parent's role, my question is, how does the other parent get to contribute to that discussion? Ooh, how sticky does that get? Oh, y'all should see Victoria's face on the video. Do that again.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know. I don't know. When I was working in schools, I've been to a plethora of IEP meetings, 504 meetings, behavioral whatever meetings where there's like 6 people in the room because you've got mom but then stepdad wants to be involved, and then you have dad, but then stepmom also wants to be involved, and so then you've got me, and you've got the teacher, and you've got the principal, and you've got whoever else, and like we're all
it's genuine circus sometimes.
Yeah, and
isn't
you're
it?
just like, I don't know. It's just, I mean, I've been,
And I hope one of the ways you land on that is they all have a place,
right.
They
all care. They all care about the
care.
kid. They all want to be involved. But then I've also been in situations where, I end up meeting with a step parent because for, whatever reason, the parent can't, like the primary parent can't come. And so then I'm working with a step parent on a behavioral health plan for their stepchild.
Right.
And and so then
the other custodial parent may or may not be there.
Yeah. For whatever reason. And yeah. I mean,
it's Neil, are you beginning to see the head spin that this can create from a clinical standpoint and all the different combinations and angles that we see with this?
Well, it goes back with everything else. The more people, more personalities, more variations on it. So there's a complexity to it that's just, I mean, it's, 2 people and their personalities. Now you have 4 people and their personalities. Then goes back to blended. Now you have kids. Now you have there's 2 or 3 more personalities. Like the dynamics and how each person perceives, how each person sees what they think they need to be doing. Goes back to your statement, like setting those expectations. This step parent's role is this at this time.
Right.
Well, and I just thought of something.
Okay.
Which I don't even know if we're going to talk about this, but like, and I don't even know if have you thought about consents? When you're working
absolutely.
with a step parent, like
100%.
I've come across that when I was at agency, like
back up. A lot of people might not really understand what you mean by consent.
So when I talk about consents, I mean, when you come to therapy, you have to sign like consent forms for treatment saying that you agree to treatment. There's also like HIPAA and other forms and stuff like that. But basically, when you're a child, you have to have your legal guardian sign the paperwork. And I have run into issues before where I'm working with a step parent, and because the step parent doesn't have legal guardianship, legal custody over the child, like they can't sign the paperwork. And so they may say like, oh yeah, my kid definitely needs school-based therapy, which is what I was doing before. Like this kid definitely needs school-based therapy. I'm like, okay, here's the registration form. But you can't sign it.
No, you cannot.
Legal guardian has to sign it, and then like
they get upset.
Or
confused.
They want it, but then and their spouse wants it, but then the other biological parent doesn't want it, and so then they're like, "Well, I don't want my kid doing this," and so then you get like legit. It can be a logistical,
particularly
nightmare.
When people are not reasonable in the highlight of the priority,
which is the what?
The benefit and beneficial aspects, the health and safety of the kid. Right. That's a bottom line. Right. Listen, I have become actually fairly aggressive at times in therapy when I see a lot of discombobulated anger or turmoil or, resentment. I have had a direct, frank, hard conversation with the adult saying, look, I am little Johnny's therapist. I want you to understand this. I am little Johnny's therapist That is my priority. That is my directive. That is what you're wanting me to work with. And when it comes to these other factors, I'm going to be pretty strong about what's in the best interest of this kid. Not in a safety and neglect DSS kind of way and whatever, but cutting through some of this nonsense and slack that you're bringing because it hurts the kid.
Yep. I mean, I was telling you about that. I have a student, and I know a kid that I meet with now. I mean, he is technically a student, but anyways,
Yep.
I digress. And the parents were divorced, and the dad wanted to meet me. I had mainly been dealing with mom, and the dad wanted to meet me. So dad came one day, and I met with mom and dad. We wasted. I don't want to say. Maybe I shouldn't say wasted, but we spent the first 30 minutes of our 50-minute session, hour-long session, with mom and dad, and eventually I had to cut them off, and I suggested to them that they might want to seek, even though they're not married anymore, they might want to seek some counseling to help with the best interest of their child. Because now in that session where I said, okay, well, we've wasted half a session, and now I only have this much time with your son. And so and it's because all they do, they just kept
I know you're using the word
on.
Wasted, and you're correcting yourself a little bit, and I'm glad for that, because honestly, that's not wasted time.
Right, I mean,
the
I think
reality of it is we are
time,
identifying quite likely a primary issue.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
We are identifying a primary issue, because I will tell you, I know we're getting a little bit off track from where we are, but that's okay, because all of these factors are important and big. A huge indicator of the health and well-being of your child is determined by the conflict level between the custodial parents. That's something that we need to highlight.
I was going to say, you might want to repeat that.
The level of health and well-being of the child is correlated very highly, meaning it's very, very connected to the level of conflict between the two custodial parents. So that needs to be dealt with. Oftentimes it can be a primary issue, which goes back again to the question, to circle us back around, how much does the other parent get to contribute to the step parenting role? And I think I'm going to say this to move us along. That's part of what's negotiated and part of what's managed, because sometimes that custodial parent-to-parent relationship struggles greatly, and you have to really set tough boundaries and have hard lines. You don't get to contribute to this, other than what we legally ascribe, which oftentimes is, never speak badly about the other parent needs notification of medical appointments and all the stuff that you get in the legalese. The ideal is that, yes, we can discuss things, we have a low level of conflict, and your view or concern of the step parent, we need to talk about and deal with. That's the ideal. So, but there's a flowing real, it gets messy. It's a moving target to a certain extent, because obviously the ex-parent does not get a vote on who you marry. Do we need to be clear about that? I mean, of course.
No, I mean, I would agree.
You don't get a vote, right?
Yeah.
But what's happening with the child between the two custodial parents, you do need to have, as you go, Neil, some of those politics.
Well, I think, especially if it's a fresh divorce, and depending how the divorce happens, there's a lot of emotions that go into this. So whether the new step parent is great for the kid or not, there's still the fresh wound that the ex is going to be fighting with, the other parent's going to be fighting with through this whole conversation. So there's this power struggle. There's a lot of the stuff that goes into it that it makes it very hard, because of that layer of the emotions that's on top of it. And it's not the emotions for what's best for the kid, is for what's best, what do I want because this person hurt me and I just want to be a pain in the butt, because I've heard a lot of stories about some very petty split, where you get the one parent not doing something just to spite, it goes back to neglecting the kid.
It all directly impacts the kid and
the other parent.
Again, it's a primary issue.
Yeah.
When that stuff's going on, and when it's to a certain level, again, like I said, I will get pretty strong draw strong lines in a therapy relationship, and I don't mind doing that because I know how directly correlated it is to the health and well-being of that child.
Yeah, I've definitely, when I was working in the school and even in my short time here, like I've definitely had to say, okay, let's refocus and remind ourselves that our priority is said child. And or even when you're in school, it said multiple kids. If they have, it's about them. It's not about, who can be the pettiest person.
Right. So we're going to go into boundary adjustments, but let's take a quick time out for our sponsor of Through a Therapist's Eyes, the podcast. So BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a sponsor of our show. What do you think about online video counseling, Miss Victoria?
I think it is very useful and sometimes it's some people's only choice when seeking therapy.
Yeah, you've kind of highlighted that several times. I mean, it's cool because it really is something that you can access in your own home. The virtual world and COVID has taught us the value of that. BetterHelp is a great way to receive counseling. Look, we talk on this show about it's a therapy show, and I'm sure a lot of people that tune into this program, and talk about all of these things with us about therapy world, like BetterHelp is a realistic and real way. I wouldn't endorse that if I didn't really believe it, to engage your own therapy experience.
Well, our listeners can't travel all the way to Mount Holly
to
see us.
They can't come see
you. Sometimes online, and I mean, the good thing about BetterHelp is you can have access to your therapist 24/7.
Right.
I mean, you wake up in the middle of the night and you're having a panic attack, you can text your therapist and they're available. And so that's
Neil,
a
did
great
we ever
thing.
figure out the hashtag on there? It's betterhelp.com/something. Do
I
you
believe
know
it's Through a Therapist's Eyes. But
Okay.
I'll double check and see. And like I said, the link is on the website. Go to counseling on the top of the website and it'll take you right there. So, but I think it's we'll just say Through a Therapist's Eyes because I can't remember if it's that or Tape Podcast.
I meant to check that out before we did that today because you're right. We can go to the website, you click on counseling, and that is the button that goes to BetterHelp, and they fill out a little survey. They connect you directly with a therapist that matches your survey information, basically, and then you just go on from there. It's as easy as that. 1, 2,
Well, you
3.
get like a 10% discount, don't
and
you?
you get a 10% discount when you go through our website. Yes.
Yeah.
So that is the advantage to you. So BetterHelp is an awesome way to engage a therapy experience. And let's get back to the show. So Neil, we're going to talk about these boundary adjustments now, and went down through a list, and I think that's what we're going to get to today. And then next show in part 2, what you're going to get is the extended family factors, as it goes to the other parent, and then advantages and disadvantages, pitfalls to avoid. But I really want to highlight, like, this is a good thing, everyone listening out there. Step parents are a great thing. Lots of advantages. This is a celebration of your relationship with this child. But before we get to the boundary questions, Neil, I mean, I'm just kind of checking in with you. Like, I'm just curious if we're making your head spin with some of these things that you may not have really thought about, because I don't know for sure, but I think your experience with a blended family went pretty well. I've never really heard you talk much about this, and I've known you for a little while now, so.
Yeah, I mean, no, I would say I'm probably the exception.
Yeah.
I'm very in my own bubble. I live my own world through what I want to see. So I had a great experience with my situation. Now, my older half brother, he might have come up with a different story because, and then my older sister. I know my older sister and my half brother butted heads a lot. Alpha personalities, closer in age.
Yeah.
How my sister perceived it versus how I perceived it,
Maybe completely
different. She was a year and a half older than me. So, for me, I had a great experience with it. I was very clear when my parents' roles. I know my parents' divorce was not because of me. I just knew they shouldn't have been
I guess I would
together.
have just jump in. I'm just wondering if you've thought about a lot of these different angles that we've already brought up in a short time.
I guess
of
basically
course.
the ways that it could have gone.
Things
that could have happened in your family.
And I've seen a lot of the other sides of it between friends or
Right.
different situations.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm always invested in this. My wife, her parents got divorced, or they got separated. Then he came back, and then they got divorced, and like he came from a previous marriage. So like her and I are both from kind of this weird thing because actually our dads have a lot of similarities, which is kind of weird. But so no, a lot of stuff you've talked about, I've thought about it between my kids, my relationship, what I grew up with, and then also their friends or family and all that other stuff. There's a lot of dynamics I've been a part of.
Okay.
Neil is definitely in a bubble because yes, I feel like compared to my experience working, now I don't, my parents are still together, so I don't have personal experience of that. But like, I feel like the parents and the families that I work with in the school and here, now some of them might be in your bubble, in that bubble with you, but most of them are not.
Neil's got a wonderful, happy little bubble. Don't try to pop his bubble.
Oh, no,
I am not trying to pop Neil's
once again,
bubble.
I was the kid, not the adult. Like, I don't know what happened, like, between my parents and, like, school, if there was ever a weird issue.
I think what Victoria's saying, Neil, is a lot of kids know exactly what happened between these parents in these situations. They know it's in their face, which is problematic to some extent.
Well, yeah, I mean, parents should
Which
keep
kind of
their
goes
stuff
back
together.
to boundaries.
Yeah.
It definitely does.
Like,
So let's run through some of these boundary adjustments that I brainstormed to think about, because there are a lot of them, and let's kind of lay into some of them to begin us thinking about how do we do these adjustments. The first thing that came on my list when I thought about like what are the life adjustments needing to be made by the step parent and the child, and then how much does the other biological custodial parent have to play into this. It is a very, very, very weird thing. If you
weird
to get into the space, if you've never been divorced, to then get divorced, and even when you're angry with this other person, realizing that there's this whole other adult in the picture now. Like, we have had however many months or years a marriage, or even prior to marriage, if we've lived together, common law, what have you.
Right.
I mean, we've had sexual relationships. Our finances were intertwined. We have life experiences that are unique between me and you, and no one ever will be a part of that. It's like really, I mean, it's an intimately close relationship that now has been severed, and somebody else has it. Like, that's a very strange adjustment. You know what I'm saying? To really get in those shoes and to be honest about the feelings that you have, the jealousy, the hurt, the guilt, the shame. There's so many different emotional realities that come into this adjustment simply by the other person dating, let alone, getting remarried and being a parent in my kid's life.
well, right. Like, I mean, if you're the point of view from the step parent, your new spouse was in love with this other person for who knows how many years, in love enough to birth children with them.
Right.
And, and now it can be hard to adjust. So now I'm accepting the fact that they're now fully in love with me and they want to make kids with me, maybe.
Trust.
And
Are they? Are they?
Yeah, they're
Are
like,
they?
are they really over the other person? Like, I mean, I'm a total
It's a lot.
negative person, so I go straight to the bad. But
You'd what?
I go straight to the bad. Like, they're still in love with them, and
Well,
how do I know they're fully over them? And like, I mean, there's lots of questions that kind of go. So it's totally weird.
And
totally
it's
weird.
not something that people oftentimes feel comfortable talking about.
Oh yeah.
Honestly. Even in a therapy relationship, I don't hear people talking about this. We have. I've brought it up sometimes, particularly when I see some of the clinical issues kind of popping. It's kind of like, well, wait a minute. Have you ever really been able to accept this change? And they look at me sometimes like, what do you mean, Chris? Accept what? Well, accept that there's really somebody else that this person in love. And they'll be like, oh, I don't care. I'm so over that. But it's kind of like, okay. There's a lot there. You have a wry smile.
It's just the like, are you mad at me? No, I'm not mad at you. Like, it's like there's this sometimes the emotions can't be hidden, and so they say one thing, but they're really. But I think that's a great thing to think, because I don't think I ever thought about that with my parents. You know, when I think about like when they separated and the stuff, I'm like, oh, I've never really thought about that from like this.
What would you feel like? If just think about it, like if your wife, ended up being with another guy.
Well,
like,
don't think about that.
Crazy. Well, but this is what we face.
Well, and then challenge you to think of the other perspective that we haven't really talked about, which is the kid's perspective.
Right.
So depending on the age of the kid, obviously, well, your parents get divorced, right? So, but then before they start dating and getting out there, sometimes you might have this slimmer of hope that your parents might get back together, right? That might be a possibility. And so then when one of your parents then says like, oh, I'm seriously dating this person.
Is lost.
Yeah. Like all of a sudden you go from having this hope of like, okay, like my parents are getting along. They're divorced, but they're getting along. Like there might be this hope of them getting back together.
Kids think that.
And then so then the finality of like, oh, now my mom is marrying a completely different man. So there is now no hope of my parents. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's pretty valid.
Well, I mean,
major grief experience.
Yeah.
I was about to say grief and then that closure. Have they actually gotten closure that's now off the table?
Right.
Yeah. And so
let me throw another one here. Right? I got so many of these good ones that we're going to have to be choosy about. Maybe we'll touch base with these next time too, but we got other things to get to. What about in the issue of boundary adjustments, right? Oftentimes there's a step parent that comes into the picture and, oh, we're all parents in this room. They've never had kids before.
Yeah.
Wow. Right?
Different perspective. Perspective. Yeah.
I will maintain, and anybody that doesn't have children out there, I don't mean to be offensive, but I speak from insight, both clinically and personally. I think there's very few things in life that this is really so for. Seriously and truly, very few things in life that this is so for. That if you haven't had a kid, you really don't know what it's like to be a parent. You really have such an impossibly difficult time to be in the shoes of a parent if you haven't been a parent. And we're not knocking people who don't have kids. I took the bad side.
Yeah.
You take the good side, Victoria.
Yeah, no, we're totally not knocking people who choose not to have kids, but then also turn around and choose to be in a marriage with someone who already has kids.
Nor your feedback or your perspective or your orientation.
Right.
That's all really, really helpful and healthy. But this creates great boundary adjustments.
Well, even as a therapist now that I have a child, even though he's only
different, don't you?
10 months today. But
happy 10 months birthday.
But he I noticed that I have a different perspective when working with other adults who have kids than when I did 10 months ago. Because I wasn't I could empathize, being a therapist in that sense, but I couldn't fully understand where they were coming from, things they were talking about until I had my own child. And so, it's very similar when you are choosing to marry someone who already has kids and you do not have any children.
Here's a thought process.
Yeah.
We were all people that hadn't no children experience till we had our kid, and we grew our experience with the kid. Mm-hmm. Now, so to me, someone coming in as a step parent.
Wait a minute, I don't understand what you just said.
Let him finish. So, I think I get where he's going.
So before you had your kids, did you have experience with kids?
No.
Okay. A step parent's coming in with the same thing. Why don't we have grace with them saying, look, we went through these struggles when we learned to have kids. But then here's the other thing. Imagine coming in as a parent, and you're starting at age 5 or you're starting at age 12. You don't have the 6-9 months of oh, it's a baby, he's cute, I learn what they like or don't like. The shock.
You just jump right into it.
So there's the grace from the current parent with the new step parent saying okay, I understand that you're going to have to adjust. But then now you have the step parents coming in being I now have to help raise something that can talk back.
Yeah.
So
immediately.
Yeah.
immediately, right? And so that's one of those things to kind of think about, like that's a big struggle for them. But I think as the parent, you have to be understanding, like, look, they might not have this experience, and I already went through this.
You kind of stole my
Yeah.
thunder for the
Again?
second time.
Yes.
But this is only a kind of.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'll take
Because
one and a half.
you're absolutely right on point in the sense that there needs to be, let's take both angles of this. Mm-hmm. There needs to be grace from the parent who's already been a parent towards the step parent. They need grace. They are really in a tough spot to catch this. However, the other side of it is we need to recognize as the step parent, you've got a process here, and I do not know what that process has been for this individual kid. Not only that, I'm really behind the learning curve of being a parent in the first place. So I'm not going to push into a space that I'm not invited to or prepared for. So let me go about this. It goes both ways. Because a step parent can push way too hard and just think they're the parent and respect me immediately, and that's not going to be realistic. And the parent may realize, well, I don't really value your, here's the key, original perspective that's fresh. This is valuable, right? So it goes really both ways, which is what I think I heard you saying a good bit of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and sorry, but like quickly, I mean, we don't have to stay too long on this, but also if you're coming into a marriage as a step parent and you have your own kids and the way that you parent is slightly different than the way the other person parents, I feel like that's got to be some boundary setting too.
Well, that's a nightmare.
I mean, maybe
How do
that
you
means
really
that
see that,
they may probably shouldn't get married in the first place. But I mean, I feel like there are going to be times where you fall in love with someone and then you find out like, okay, our parenting styles are slightly different because we each have our own kids.
Well,
and then
usually.
then you have to set boundaries for like how that works.
Yeah, and that's how you get into some of the negotiation component of how are we going to run this home. Here's and this goes kind of a little bit to that, Victoria. I think we could do 3 shows because we could have done a whole show awesomely, have fun, and just park out here on the boundaries, right? Who's in charge? Who's in charge when you have a blended family and step parents involved? Who's in charge? The custodial parent or the step parent?
Depends.
It's a little bit of a trick question.
It depends on the situation.
Everyone. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, because
What's interesting you say that, Victoria. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, if I'm a step parent and I'm home alone with my stepchildren, I am the one like in that moment that's in charge. If we're speaking literally, I mean, because there is no biological parent
get
in
away
the
from
home.
the literal and think about all the situations, Victoria, you've dealt with who makes the house rules, who makes the house norms, what are the things that we set
Well, I
up
mean,
in our
you're
home,
a family,
that type
so
of a thing.
you make them together. You're a new family,
Yeah.
so you make them together.
Yeah, you're kind of on it. Here's another one of my rules of thumb that I've kind of gone by over many years to really get at, and this has helped this question like a lot over the years. The rule is that when the child is present, the parent is a step forward from the step parent. They are your parent. The other is not your parent. So there is a step forward that you present. And step parents might not like that. They balk a lot at this. It's a great struggle point because it's kind of like, well, I'm the man of the house. What are you talking about? I'm a step behind her. Well, she's the biological parent to this child, and that is a role that has been longer than your role in this kid's
Right.
life, and that boundary has to be laid out. However, when the kid is not in the room, this is where it gets to what I think you were saying, Victoria.
Okay.
Now we're on equal footing. 100%, 50-50 equal footing, right? Because this is my home. I live in this home, right? And so we have to come to how do we manage the rules of the house, the norms of the house, Sunday meals or no Sunday meals, what we do with church or what we don't do with church or finances involved and all this kind of stuff. There's many, many questions with how do we operate as a family? Well, it's 50-50 in the home between the adults when the kid's not present. But when the kid's present, the parent needs to be a tick ahead. And that's just
the biological parent.
the
right.
biological custodial parent is a tick ahead. Unless, of course, it's like, the kid is like a year and a half or even 2 years or whatever. it's like a tick. But if the kid is like, 15 years old, you're a step in front. The step parent is a little further back because it's been 15 years I've been this kid's parent.
I would disagree to a point.
Ooh.
And the reason why I say this is when you have, whether it's biological or by marriage, to me, parenting, you have to come at it with a united front. And if the parent has a veto power over the step parent, it creates this weird conflict of interest where the child starts playing the one that they're going to think they're going to get away with. So if the biological parent can basically let the kid do whatever and the step parent has no say in the situation, even though it's in the household, like, I just feel as parenting, whether it's a biological or marriage, you have to be united front in that aspect. But this goes back to that household. Now, when you get one parent's household versus another parent's household, there's that whole, each one has their own dynamics, but the parent and the step parent, to raise that child, you need to be on a united front. And
need to be in lockstep.
And if you give that child that half an inch saying there's a chink in this armor because the biological, they'll take advantage. So you have to be very cautious that the step parent needs to understand the biological parent does have precedence, like you said, over the child because it is their biological. But to the kid, it's
got to be a united front. I couldn't agree more. You're absolutely right. Let me explain further in the idea of this guidepost through a metaphor. And I've done this as a therapy activity with the kids in the office. That is where we have fun, particularly with little kids in the office, where I have the parents hold hands, right? And that hold hands, and then we invite the kids to go ahead and break the grasp. And usually the first go around or whatever, the kids are able to break the grasp because, the parents feel awkward and weird, and so it's easy to break their hands apart. And that demonstrates, like, this is a problem. But then we get a strong grasp, and you can't see me on the audio version of this, but one hand is grabbing the other wrist. The other hand is grabbing the other wrist. It is a much firmer grasp. And then we invite the kids to break the hold. Of course, they can't. Because we need to have the step parent arm in arm, lockstep. Neil couldn't agree more. But while you're holding hands, as you said, the parent is a little bit of a step forward. Because there's no hard and fast black and white with any of this stuff. The norms get developed in your home and household. But, you can imagine if, like, the parent is silent and the step parent is in front, telling the kid what's going to go on. It gets real awkward and real weird. It can't until those norms are developed and you, of course, a step parent can be independently operating because you've got a relationship for 10 years.
Yeah, that's basically what I was going to say is over time you would hope that would
norms get developed.
That the custodial parent would eventually take that step back to where they're even with the step parent.
Well, yeah, and I even bulk a little bit even at even because I've in both of my step parent relationships, of course, particularly with my stepdad, I was a little older, but no, my dad is my dad and my mom is my mom. Now, but we got a lot of circumstances, where you don't have a mother in the picture, and so there are a lot of this moves around. Again, I probably should have put a qualifier in the beginning. There are no hard and fast rules.
Definitely not.
There are guidelines and a whole shit ton of gray that goes into these boundary adjustments and issues, and that's why it begins to be so dynamic.
Right.
And I think honestly one of the keys to the whole relationship type of thing with that step parent is there has to be patience and you have to acquire trust. You can't
I was going to mention trust.
You can't come in as a step parent and expect not only your spouse to trust you with their kid immediately, but also the kid to trust you to take care of them. Like, there has to be this, like, yeah, okay, you agreed to marry me, but I still don't really know, like, this is still my baby. These are still my kids that I have to protect. And so you have to, as a step parent, you have to expect that there has to be a time to not only establish new norms, but also build that trust. So not only does the spouse, the original parent, trust you, but also that the kid starts feeling comfortable with you. And if the original parent doesn't feel comfortable with you, the kids are going to feed off of that. So have you done your due diligence as a step parent to prove yourself that you can help take care of this child.
Exactly. I'm going to throw this other boundary one in because we need to taxi in for a landing, but because it just fits so much with this one. But look at these, listen to these words, right? Like, can the parent accept the advice of the step parent or requirements of the step parent? Which is an interesting switch on words, right? Which one is this?
Yeah.
Am I right? Am I offering you advice or thoughts about your kid? Or am I offering you requirements of my household, says the step parent? And you might balk at me using those words, but in a flowing and healthy arrangement, maybe you don't have these words in your step parenting relationship. Great, because we don't really want them there. We want a much different spirit. But I'm telling you, people feel this way. I see this in my therapy relationships. Mm-hmm. And I've literally had step parents saying, they won't give me any advice. They won't accept any of my thoughts, or any of my advice. Or, you know what? They're not following my requirements of a household in the way that it's run. This is crazy. I don't understand why my spouse thinks this way. This is ridiculous.
I'm not sure about you, but if I ever gave my spouse a requirement, that is the last thing she's gonna do. But that's another thing.
But
I know, yeah.
Have you heard this, Victoria?
Not in my experience
Not in that
so
way?
far. No, I mean I've heard some step parents say, if it were me, I would do this. But I mean, or they say if it were my kid, that has been something I've heard. Is it if it were my kid, and I'm like, if I was a custodial parent, I'd be like, well, you need to be looking at this as almost as if it's your child because you're basically there all day, every day,
You're the
anyways.
parent. Say the words or not say the words. You're either upset about giving or receiving advice or giving or receiving requirements. And we don't really want those things here. But that's what ends up kind of playing out. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we're going to do a part 2 with step parenting.
We didn't even finish going through this list.
Because there's a lot of cool things that people are really traversing and dealing with this parent. So y'all want to hang out another hour or two and record part 2 tonight, or are we going home? I'm joking. We'll do this next week.
I've been up since 3. I want to go home.
I have
you
a
really?
10-month-old. I gotta go home.
Oh no, we are wore out. Listen, I'm going to taxi us in here, guys, by saying the celebration of being or having a step parent in the kid's life is going to be accentuated a little bit more next week, because that is a really important thing to understand. As much as it is a difficult relationship, as much as it is a confusing and confounding relationship, it has a lot of dynamic moving parts to it, but it can be a beautiful and wonderful experience to kind of have so many people in that kid's life that care about this kid. So we're going to be talking a lot more about that next week. All you step parents out there, hang with it. It can be tough, but I'm really appreciative that you're really caring for the kid that you call son or daughter or by name. It's all good. It's all okay. So we'll see you guys next week. Stay tuned and stay well.
Bye, y'all.